So today is Saturday, what's the date? 12th, okay, June 12th, 2021. And this morning we'll have a short Teisho made up of several little sections. And then we will have a funeral service for Ed Conte, Jan Conte's brother, who passed away suddenly and recently. I'd like to read to you first a page from a book that has always meant a great deal to me, which is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, Flight to Arras. He, of course, was a noted French author. The Little Prince is probably his most famous book. Wind, Sand, and Stars, another. Night Flight, another. But Flight to Arras was written when he was a reconnaissance pilot during World War II. The French government wanted him to stop flying and be a national treasure. They essentially wanted him to write both good books, but also moving propaganda against the Nazis and the Vichy also. So, but he continued to fly regardless, and it was on such a flight that he lost his life eventually. So the book is about why he bothers flying and risking his life when he could have had safety. And I'll read to you a page of this. Enthusiasm is not the important thing. There is no hope of enthusiasm in defeat. The important thing is to dress, climb aboard, and take off. What we ourselves think of the procedure is of no importance. A little boy in school, enthusiastic about his grammar lesson, would seem to me a little prig, not to be trusted. The important thing is to strive towards a goal which is not immediately visible. The goal is not the concern of the mind, but of the spirit. The spirit knows how to love, but it is asleep. Talk to me about temptation. I know as much about temptation as any church father. To be tempted is to be tempted. When the spirit is asleep, to give in to the reasons of the mind. What do I accomplish by risking my life in this mountain avalanche? I have no notion. Time and again, people would say to me, I can arrange to have you transferred here or there. That is where you belong. You will be more useful there than in a squadron. Pilots. We can train pilots by the thousand, whereas you, no question, but they were right. My mind agreed with them, but my instinct always prevailed over my mind. Why was it that their reasoning never convinced me, even though I had no argument with which to defeat it? I would say to myself, intellectuals are kept in reserve on the shelves of the propaganda ministry like pots of jam to be eaten when the war is over. Hardly an argument. I agree. And now, once again, like every other soldier of the group, I have taken off in the face of every good reason, every obvious argument, every intellectual reflex. The moment will come when I shall know that it was reasonable to fight against reason. I have promised myself that if I am alive, I shall walk alone on the highway that runs through our village. Then perhaps I shall dwell at last in my own self, and I shall see. It may be that I shall have nothing to say about what I then see. When a woman seems to me beautiful, I have no words to say so. I see her smile, and that is all. Intellectuals take her face apart and explain it bit by bit. They do not see that smile. To know is not to prove, nor to explain. It is to accede to vision. But if we are to have vision, we must learn to participate in the object of the vision. The apprenticeship is hard. Now I'd like to read you a piece of mine that appeared in the Sun magazine back in 1989. Also in a book, Progressions, Readings for Writers, which is quite lofty company that I got put in among. I don't know how that happened. Barbara Kingsolver, James Baldwin, Henry Louis Gates Jr., Richard Rodriguez, Maya Angelou, Cynthia Ozick, et cetera, Jamaica Kincaid, Thoreau. Anyway, the title of my piece is Zen Failure. And I wrote this in the year that Rose's mother and my mother had both died, back in 1989 or so. The issue of failure, to preface this, in Zen is complex and contradictory. Some people can actually fear failure so much they hesitate to make a real effort in practice. And so they never risk failure, but then again, they never risk what we might call success. What does real effort look like? Daily Zazen, regular Doksan, regular Teisho, Sesshin, which would also mean, if at all possible, consecutive back-to-back days of Sesshin periodically. This is the foundation of the best we can do to make whatever we want to call our success in Zen possible. But then again, failure might have its own benefits. But of course, to really have failure, you have to risk everything. You can't hold back if it's going to be real failure. So Zen failure. For many years while practicing Zen, I thought I was a failure. But as more years went by, I began to realize that failure is the heart of Zen. Failure is what Zen is about. Perhaps it's what life is about. Successes never seem to last. Death, after all, comes in the end to take all successes away. If you want something abiding, something for the long run, look to failure. When I say failure, I don't mean giving up, turning around and walking away. I mean the failure we work hard for, failure that we put everything into, bitter failure. Real failure requires real effort and is its own reward. In The Four Ages of Man, William Butler Yeats speaks of failure as the essence of spiritual life. The poem goes, "He with body waged a fight, but body won. It walks upright. Then he struggled with the heart. Innocence and peace depart. Then he struggled with the mind. His proud heart he left behind. Now his wars on God begin. At stroke of midnight, God will win." There it is, failure. Defeat of all one's hopes, fears, stratagems, efforts, the thing we fear most. In Yeats's poem, there's also some glimmer that failure may not be as bad as we think. Is it so bad that God wins? And through the little doorway opened by that doubt, we come to Zen. But failure is a two-edged sword. Remember last week we looked at the koan, case 42 in the Mumonkan or Wumenkan, gateless barrier. The young woman comes out of samadhi, and it has in it this very important line. Manjushri, of course, bodhisattva of wisdom, can't awaken the woman, but a beginner bodhisattva immediately is able to. And the line that Wu Men puts in there is, "The failure is wonderful indeed." So keep that in mind behind all of this. The failure is wonderful indeed. What is that getting at? Anyway, failure is a two-edged sword. There's the failure that prevents us from living fully, the failure built of fears and expectations, patterns to which mind and body have been long habituated. There's the failure to hear the birds singing, failure to use the intricate senses with which we've all been so lavishly endowed. Then there's the failure to get what we want. Perhaps that's the one we know best. And then there's the failure that's open and pure, the failure that Zen is all about. What could be more ridiculous, after all, than working hard in retreat after retreat, session after session, sitting after sitting, doksan after doksan, facing fear after fear, letting go of desire after desire, hope after hope, only to find out that we have to fail completely in the end. We work so hard in this life only to die. We must give up everything. And this discovery is exactly where success in Zen, in life, can begin. During this last winter and early spring, my wife's mother and my own mother died. With their deaths has come the heartfelt recognition that all efforts come to naught. Each of us will die, and everything we have gained, everything we have worked hard for will be taken from us. Thoughts, feelings, the singing of birds, the cool wind on our skin on a hot day, the sunrise and the sunset, the people we love, all gone. Our children will be gone. The children we worry about, whom we hover over in our minds day and night, they're going to die. No matter how hard we work at protecting them, no matter how well they do growing up. And our grandchildren will die, and our great-grandchildren. So underneath all our success, even after a lifetime of success, we still have to come face to face with this insurmountable failure. Each of us starts off in life complete and whole, but after a while, trained by the world around us, we discover that we want more. We want to be handsome or beautiful, to be loved and respected. We want to be independent and strong, perhaps wise and certainly eternal. But somehow few of these things work out. The failure becomes so bitter that we have to do something. Perhaps we begin practicing Zen. And after many years, it's failure after failure, as if we're shooting at a target that we keep missing. One day, we find that failures are a kind of success. I came to Zen through a number of failures, the pain of which was bitter enough to drive me onto a completely different path, the path of practice. And then, since I began practicing, there was the glorious failure of the bookshop I started. It took much effort to engineer that one. It fell apart, and then, great surprise, something new emerged, something better. After the closing of the bookshop, I had an idea for a book. Much earlier, I'd lost a lot, and Rose and I were living in backwoods Pennsylvania. There'd been an old quarry there, and I thought I might take a wish from my childhood and combine it with some of the feelings I'd had while walking through that quarry and make something new, as well as heal some old wounds. For 3 years, I worked on the story of a boy and his imagination. For 3 years, I was turned down by my editor. 100 rewrites on this one little story, turned down each time. Then suddenly, as I was about to drop the whole project, I saw how the thing could work after 3 years of failure. It was essentially written in 30 seconds, and the book became a great success. That period of loss and pain from many years ago gave me the basis to create something new, something that pleased me greatly. How do we explain it? Can failure be a good thing? One day when I was young, my father looked into my room, saw me drawing and said, "Don't become an artist." I worried about what he'd said for a long time. Ultimately, I failed to follow his advice. I had a talk with my father a couple of years ago as he was driving me to a storytelling performance I was giving. I said to him, "You know, the people I respected most when I was younger were not successes. Van Gogh never sold a painting and died in poverty and maybe madness. William Blake died in poverty too, but at least in joy. And then there's Herman Melville. After writing perhaps the greatest American novel, he got terrible reviews and lived his life in obscurity and despair. During their lives, these people seem to be failures. Then there are people who are successes," I went on to say to my dad. "Perhaps they earn a lot of money. take lavish vacations, wear expensive clothes. Maybe they make some product that pollutes the environment a bit. That legacy they leave doesn't last long. And if it does, it often something we don't want in the long run anyway. But Van Gogh, Blake, and Melville, their works just get stronger and stronger. How do you explain this? Which is success and which is the failure? There's an old story from China, the green pillow dream. Once there was a farmer who was very dissatisfied with his life. He set out to seek his better fortune. He walked for a day and came to an inn in the foothills of some mountains. He was hungry, so he went in. Because he didn't have much money, he ordered only a bowl of rice and a cup of tea. He was very tired and was going to lie down until his meal was served. An old man who was staying at the inn said, "If you're going to lie down, why don't you take my pillow?" Now, pillows in ancient China weren't soft cushions. They were ceramic, perhaps, and shaped to your neck and shoulders, and you lay on it with your head kind of flat, looking kind of up, your neck cradled, the back of your head cradled in this ceramic hard pillow. The old man offered the farmer a beautiful glazed green pillow. The farmer had a conversation with the old man, who mentioned that it must be nice to be young and healthy. The farmer said that although he was indeed young and healthy, he wasn't very happy. He worked all day in the fields and had nothing to show for it. Finally, the farmer put his head down on the pillow and fell asleep. The next thing he knew, he was walking through a tunnel from which he emerged into an open field with mountains in the distance, waterfalls flowing like silver threads, horses and deer running, tigers stalking in the mountains. He walked along the road that ran through the field and came to a village. A beautiful young woman ran out of the biggest house and called him by name. She'd been waiting for him, she said. They got married. Before long, he was overseeing the estate of his father-in-law. He and his wife had children. In time, he became governor. When barbarians invaded, he was called to lead the armies. And just like that, he achieved a great victory, driving the invaders before him like dust before the wind. He was made prime minister. The land flourished as it had never done before. But some of the other ministers became jealous and set up a plot against him, producing forged letters to show he'd been working with the barbarians to overthrow the emperor. So he was banished and lost everything. He and his wife and children went to live in a hotel where guards watched them night and day. He had no privacy, no peace of mind. He had nothing. He would have been happier, he realized, just being an unknown farmer. 8 years went by. Then a writer arrived with a message from the emperor, who discovered the plot and asked for forgiveness. All the man's lands were restored. His sons became great generals and ministers, and again, under his guidance, the land flourished. He became very old and at last was lying on his deathbed. The emperor sent the best doctor in the world, but it was hopeless. Tears flowed. His sons and daughters, his grandsons and granddaughters, his daughters-in-law and his old wife were crying and crying as he left this world. He found himself walking through a tunnel. He opened his eyes. He was lying in the inn with his head on the pillow, the rice and tea just being set down on the table before him. He had lived a whole life, yet hardly a moment had passed. There's a line in Zen that goes, "The failure is wonderful indeed." We all come to know failure intimately, don't we? Is it wonderful? Another Zen line says, "When your bow is broken and your last arrow spent, then shoot with your whole heart. When your bow is broken and your last arrow spent, then shoot with your whole heart." Failure comes as we try to succeed. It happens naturally. No special efforts are needed. So my advice is just forget all this. In fact, don't fail to do so. So we can actually actually stop here. I was going to read one more section. We're reading Yasutani Roshi's introductory talks on Zazen, but I think we can stop here and get ready for our ceremony. And we'll begin Yasutani Roshi again, or renew it next time. So we'll proceed from here. Rose, would you? Yeah.
So we'll have the memorial service for Ed Conti, and just I have included attached the service. I hope everybody saw the latest email, which had the chanting service included. If not, it's up to you to take a minute to leave the Zoom meeting, find that new email, and then join the meeting again, or just participate by listening.